Down the road. Down the road, there's a large conference room that fills up twice a month with elected board members, nervous elementary schoolers presenting projects, staff being honored, and vocal community members aggressively professing their displeasure with the curriculum and environment that exists solely in their imagination. It's a scene that feels light years away from our day-to-day. It's something I see glimpses of in abbreviated clips from places thousands of miles away and multiple generations behind. There is an armor around our echo chamber, a force field around our fantasy. But the contingency is organized, unceasing, persistent, and fueled by a God-appointed demand to instill pious principles into this heretical society. For the longest time, we were helms deep. When the purveyors of right and wrong demanded the indolent educators leave their Google boxes and return to the realm of desks and whiteboards, we waited until the vaccines before we obliged. When the persecuted and oppressed majority referenced buzzwords concocted in a deliberate and elaborate scheme and posited, if you think about it, you're actually the racists, as if it were a checkmate up their sleeve, we released a statement doubling down on our intention to teach about privilege, power, and prejudices. When the crusaders of the moral compass ran campaigns to sit alongside the very officials they combated in order to pedestal their own propaganda, the voters within the boundary lines doused their ambitions with a margin that was admittedly much slimmer than I had hoped. For the longest time, I felt guilty for working in a place where we held well-attended unity events and sold rainbow paraphernalia, while friends in places thousands of miles away and multiple generations behind would face termination for wearing a prism-colored pin. It isn't brave to take a stance when there is no backlash, and we are untouched by the protests and protected by the powers that be. But down the road, the foundation is weakening as the seats continue to fill with angry adults soliloquizing about agendas and grooming, saying things like, "My Christian kid just shared her beliefs and didn't say anything wrong or mean, and now the activists are telling her to go kill herself." I want to be there and say, that is terrible that your child has to hear those things and experience that hatred. We don't play about suicide around here, especially since the tragedy of it has touched people whom I hold dear. But can we also acknowledge that telling someone they are going to spend an eternity in a hellish damnation because of who they love doesn't fall under the category of didn't say anything wrong or mean? It's the same hatred your child is experiencing, one where someone says they are unworthy of their own existence, and I refuse to let any of my students push that narrative on any of my other students. However, in order to spill that speech, I'd have to leave the fortress. And inside these walls, the patrons who pack the board meetings have no sway. Or at least I thought they didn't. We've put a hold on buying new books because there's a magnifying glass on our library, one that seems more intent on starting fires rather than giving a better view. I got a text the other day from a homie saying he loved me while he barricaded himself in the bathroom with students, all the while hoping the alarm raised was a false one. The next day at the board meeting, someone mentioned that a reckoning was coming because of our gender and sexuality lessons, and I wondered if I'd be getting more texts this year. Suddenly, I recognized that guilt I held was a luxury. Suddenly, the language and ideas from places thousands of miles away and generations behind aren't so distant. They're just down the road.